I'll go back and do anything. It's kind of like anything which you did not great in the past. In the future, you have this belief where if I go back and play Little League now, I'll be fucking awesome.
Isn't
Incredible.
isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing and expecting a different result?
I haven't heard that. Nah, nah.
Okay.
Welcome to Founder Mode, the podcast where we dive into the mindset and tactics of founders.
Yeah, Kevin, I'm pretty fired up about today because we're going to talk about what it means when you're actually like, timing is everything, right? And we're going to talk to somebody who was ahead of the curve in AI, maybe too far ahead, and building intelligent systems before that was like the obsession of the minute, the soup du jour, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, well, everybody's talking about AI today. There's founders who saw this potential years ago and were building real stuff and real applications that were really useful, well before this. And so we're really focused on the science and not just the science fiction of sort of AI.
Yeah, it's fascinating to look at the evolution of AI in business applications over the past decade or so.
I think the tools have changed, but I think more importantly, the core challenges and what people and where you can create value with AI, it still is similar, right? It's like the business problems that people are attacking are very, very, the history rhymes or sort of, doesn't repeat
Yeah.
itself, but rhymes, I think comes to
Right.
play here over and over.
And is it important and should it be prioritized as additional context that the AI is not good at yet? And then to connect it to our conversation today, like if I said, oh yeah, I'm going to schedule that meeting with Kevin, we got to meet and talk about that thing. Is it going to tell me like, oh, by the way, let's schedule that meeting, like fire off the email to Kevin. Let's get the ping pong going where we get the meeting scheduled. And we're talking to somebody today who has been at the forefront of this AI entrepreneurship for nearly 2 decades. Dennis Mortensen is a serial entrepreneur who's founded and successfully exited multiple companies, including Index Tools, which was acquired by Yahoo, Visual Revenue, acquired by Outbrain, and most notably x.ai, which we know of as something totally different today, but it was this AI scheduling assistant that was acquired by Bizzabo in 2021.
He is now the CEO and founder of LaunchBrightly, continuing his track record of innovation. Dennis brings a unique perspective and someone who you'll definitely enjoy listening to, building AI applications long before the current wave of excitement. Dennis, welcome to Founder Mode. Great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here. Really appreciate you joining us to talk about building AI before it was the buzzword that it is today.
So Dennis, you famously sort of owned x.ai before Elon Musk took over. Like, what's the craziest part about watching your domain turn into the face of someone else's vision?
Mixed emotions, but if I were to pick from the funny bucket, I think the funniest is that where people will say something or find some video of me in the past saying, Elon looked very different early on. That's not fucking Elon. That's me. So there's this kind of confusion for where we even built a Simic brand, certainly back then, over half a decade. He ends up owning it. He is who he is. They look at a video thinking, he looks odd when he was younger. Yeah, I know. I certainly get that. My daughter sent it to me all the time. So I get that.
That's kind of wild. Like, that's wild that it's also that like the internet has this sort of short-term memory, or also like, the depth of people's research is so weak, right? Like, there's a bunch of ways to measure that, right?
I saw another video. That guy looks a little different. That's
Yeah.
confusing to me.
But
Yeah.
also because I didn't know, but I know now that for other people, all white folks obviously kind of look the same.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That's wild. So true. So true.
Makes sense. So, okay, so xAI in its first instantiation with you at the helm, not Elon, you were annotating millions of emails manually, which sounds insanely brutal. This is pre the LLMs of today. What's the one and maybe unexpected and quite possibly painful lesson from building that very first AI data set?
So any startup is probably one of two things. It's 1,000 things, but it's certainly a startup where you're trying to solve either some market challenge and or a science challenge. Try not to solve both at the same time. It's going to be twice as hard. In 2014, thought we could carve out just a corner of the language universe. So to answer your question, we're in that bucket where we were brave enough or foolish enough to believe we could carve out that particular corner for where we could create this agent that could converse on scheduling only. And we did it on a labeled data set, which we assembled. So 32 million hand labeled items on really a bucket of intents. In the end, I think it was about 47 intents, like new meeting, cancel meeting, so on and so forth. And this is very quickly turning into therapy for Dennis and not a podcast. But whatever decision you take early on, there is no rewind or undo. So it's just a very scary space to be in, for where every decision you take, and often in startup, right, you take decisions all the time, all cowboy and most things, because tomorrow I'm just going to change my mind. This, though, you really have to kind of pick up that dial code, look out the window, find some sort of peace and say, okay, I'm going to go with this. And then I'm trying not going to cry in 6 months when I figure out that was not a good decision.
Yeah.
Very interesting space to be in when you kind of hand label at that kind of scale.
It's wild. And so like now looking, kind of to today or even, slightly back, but mostly forward, like what kind of perspective on this kind of practical AI, did you change or reject, kind of now that you're, doing LaunchBrightly, where obviously you're using AI for that? Like what sort of is like, wow, those are decisions I don't want to go back on and do again. I mean, clearly the labeling thing is, evolved, but I'm curious, like what other things have you seen or sort of learn from that, sort of one-way doors are like, I'm never going back through that one again?
I'll go back and do anything. It's kind of like anything which you did not great in the past. In the future, you have this belief for where if I go back and play Little League now, I'll be fucking awesome.
Incredible.
Isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing and expecting a different result?
I haven't heard of that. Nah,
Okay.
I
All
don't
right.
believe that. That's
Okay, good.
bullshit on that.
Okay.
There's certainly things for where I wish in this particular kind of vertical, this particular attack, that I would have figured it out quicker. I'll give you a few things. And again, we're coming back to the beginning of trying to help Dennis be kind of reasonably kind of happy. So we'll have a chat with him for half an hour. But there's a few things for where I at least initially thought that the success of our endeavor will be somehow aligned to the quality of our predictions, because we're in the science bucket of trying to kind of solve for the, at that moment, unsolved. And you kind of tune your kind of precision recall on whatever type of prediction you're making, and you spend 8 months on this and 4 months on that. And in the end, kind of looking back, kind of post-exit, where you kind of sober up a little bit, it was not really attached to the quality of the predictions. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't have applied, love and care. It just means that almost all of the success, and certainly in the end on exit and on kind of growth, it was all attached to either good understanding of the vertical we were in, as in the very pain we're trying to remove, and product design decisions, not predictions. And I'll give you just a few of those, like very silly. This I should have figured out like 2 weeks in, but probably took me a couple of years. And in some settings, you'll kind of serve multiple constituents. Say you're eBay, you're serving both sellers and buyers. You're making all your money from sellers. And then it looks like the very people I make money from, I should try to at least cater to them, because money comes in one direction and love should go in the other direction. They very quickly figured out that sellers don't really give a shit as long as you bring them happy buyers. I said the UI could be the worst of the worst. As long as I make 100 grand on selling whatever I need to sell on eBay, hey, I'm cool. It'll be nice if you could kind of fix this shitty interface, but you know what? I'm coming back tomorrow. It was very similar in the meeting scheduling space, for where we, for the longest period of time, certainly early on, catered to what we call the host. I said, Jason used our product, asked Amy to set up a meeting between Dennis and Kevin for half an hour on Zoom next week, with Lainey being optional. I should now try to cater to Jason, but that was not the case. I should cater to the very people who don't know I exist and or subscribe to my product, because if I make them happy, the host will be happy. And now when I say it out loud, it seems so obvious that why didn't you see that immediately? It changed like everything for us. Like that whole kind of growth machine just kind of exploded post kind of massaging a product into a setting for where make guests happy first. That was certainly one kind of interesting insight. Another one, which I think carries over all the way up to today, and I think we've seen most of the folks certainly I chat to implement this. I saw some value initially in trying to humanize the agent. Actually, so much so, as in, I had multiple theater majors out of Harvard working on the persona of the agent alone. So when you spoke to agent on Monday, it felt like you spoke to the same agent on Friday. That certainly takes some effort. Like if you write a play, it shouldn't feel like Othello kind of changed dramatically throughout that particular play. And the amount of energy we injected into that. And I would say of all the experiments we did, this is one of those I hated the most, pushed back, but then again, you have to kind of let go a little bit. But one day, one of the PMs ran an experiment where we renamed the agent from Amy and Andrew to just Scheduler, like just a straight tool name, no persona, no nothing. I think of all of them, it was probably in the top 3. Cost us nothing. It was like a 2-hour implementation, run the experiment, and it moved us in that kind of single metric of the whole kind of company success, which we call meeting success, from initial request to actual insert, multiple single percentage points, like just a staggering amount of that idea of a persona didn't help us at all. I'll give you a few pointers why that was. As soon as you humanize it, people, because that's what you ask them to, start to treat it as a human. As they start to do that, they assume all sorts of things which are not true. We can talk about what they are, but it just didn't work at all. That took me forever. Do you know how you get married to an idea?
Yeah.
Know that, hey, yeah,
You loved Amy and you loved Andrew and you didn't want to kill them.
of course.
Yeah, they were real people. And that maybe wasn't the best choice. But interestingly, I use an AI scheduling bot now. I'm not going to drop their name on this show because all I care about is x.ai, and I wish that it would come back from the dead and be the one I get to use. But truthfully, I'm using one, and they chose bot at their domain. And that sounds like a very informed decision based on what you experienced. Maybe they made that choice like a roll of the dice, but it sounds like you had some data to support it. The story you just told is interesting about the internal decision making and experiments you ran, but you also kind of had this art form behind what became AI powered scheduling in the earliest days with all these tens of millions of labels. What was the human user reaction? Like, if you can kind of draw out one example about someone reacting to Amy or Andrew that just like completely floored you, good or bad.
I'll give you a closing note, then we can pick some from the beginning. I can give you all the silly ones, as in we've received anything from chocolates to flowers to whiskey to see pictures of sandwiches brought into meetings where they assume there'll be another individual called Amy in that particular meeting. So we've seen all of that kind of juice that comes attached to that of running 1,000 daily kind of Turing tests. Side note, the funny thing about winning a Turing test is a lost acquisition opportunity. As in, I did a job so good that the guest was the biggest pool of new subscribers, didn't understand this was a piece of software they could go subscribe to. So when I won the Turing test, the geek in me kind of walked around the office with a few high fives, but it didn't really work. As it did, yeah, but fuck, it was
You
funny.
were so smart, too smart.
Yeah.
Too smart.
What I do have, which one day I'll share with you. So the acquirer, we built many things, right? But we certainly built a very robust kind of probabilistic prediction engine that could navigate this language space. Then we built this kind of very robust deterministic scheduling engine for where, well, kind of like the self-driving car, right? So I now see the world in front of me, or certainly a simpler version of the universe. Now, when I take that in, what action do I take? Accelerate, deaccelerate, left 7 degrees, turn on the blinker, so on and so forth. We needed the same. That engine was what we got acquired for. I probably spent 85% of my capital on making predictions and 15% on making that particular engine. That's what they needed, though. And we probably had, just to give you some scope, probably had 21,000 distinct scheduling tests that we would run through. So that was just extremely robust. I said, I knew exactly what would happen in any given scenario, which I've seen over millions of meetings, what action to take. So that ended up being the one thing that got acquired, right? What's this?
When you think about that today, and when you were starting your current company, what would be like one, honest piece of feedback you'd give to founders? And would you try to determine up front, like what that deterministic sort of valuable piece is and spend more energy there if you were going to do that today?
it's probably a lie, but it's certainly a lie I tell myself. But it's one for where I pride myself on being attached to the pain and spending an unfair amount of time pre-venture in validating it. As in, before I do anything, all the kind of friends and validation which I do is to try to have them help me kill the idea, because it's certainly much cheaper, easier, and less painful
Yeah.
for me to kill it this week because Jason told me that it's shite, and I couldn't really argue against why it's not shite, and now I'm not doing it. And I have a whole process for how they help me kill it. I'm supposed to be the single defender, but if I can somehow not defend it, we kill it. That I will still recommend people do. It seems, and that comes in cycles. Once a new particular paradigm comes along, people fall in love with the paradigm and the technology attached to it, and you just AI for the fun of it, right? But you should really just look out and say, who is in pain here? What does
Yeah.
that particular pain look like? How can I remove it? If somehow I need to use new technology to remove it, awesome. Because that means you couldn't remove it 3 years ago, and now there's an opportunity or an open window. Let's go take it. I do think, but that happens all the time, probably for all of us. But people kind of figure, oh, shit, I can kind of summarize text now, which you couldn't do before, or I can kind of do things in language that wasn't possible kind of just a few years ago. Let me kind of do these 4 fun things for who
Yeah,
and why.
the pain isn't there. I can think of no better example than Slack AI. Like, it's just like summarizations here, and you need to pay an extra $10 or $12 a month per seat. And I'm like, oh, why?
Yeah,
For what was the pain I was feeling? So I think, if we can flip that statement on its head a little bit that you just made about, really viscerally feeling pain, and this kind of juxtaposition against, well, with AI anybody can be an idea guy and vibe code their way to like this cool new thing. Let's say AI models just were gone tomorrow, right? And not because the super intelligence wiped out all the grid and the power and everything, but like, just they just weren't here. What would you say is the critical skill founders would desperately need to relearn because there isn't this like thing you can lean on?
it's a good question. And I'm not even sure it's a good question certainly today, but you could probably ask the same question every year going back 50 years.
Every hype cycle. So,
Where
VR, AR, mobile, Web 2,
yeah,
like Web 3,
level,
crypto.
right?
Yeah.
Where I took my CS degree writing assembly language. And I'm not really sure many of my comrades in my current team could write much assembly, if anything at all, for a particular kind of processor. And that's fine because now we think of even C or C++ as a low-level language. But you know what? I'm not even sure they could write any good C code. They might be able to do some half-decent Python, and that's good, or kind of compile some Scala. But most of them just write JavaScript today and don't think much of it. And if I need more, I guess we need a new instance on Amazon. Yeah, for my fucking money. Like, how about you kind of look at that in a loop first? So there's just many things on every layer that just disappeared or got abstracted away through a set of experts or kind of innovations along the way. I think AI is the same. What I do think we would kind of miss a little bit is that we've now at least seen glimpses of a new UI paradigm. So we haven't had many UI paradigms over the years. I grew up on the command line. My mom kind of got access to the graphical UI. My kids kind of probably grew up, if that's a distinct UI paradigm of his own, the touch interface of the mobile phone. And now it looks like there's a conversational UI paradigm just about to arrive that we're starting to kind of figure out how to take advantage of. Not the early Alexas wasn't really seen as a UI paradigm had inklings of it. But now, as that arrived, if that disappeared, I think we would have to kind of relearn how to kind of create a way to solve a problem that today is kind of solved in text or through a kind of unstructured text query. How many kind of drop downs, radio buttons, and checkboxes do I need to put in place to kind of make this happen? And that might need to be kind of relearned.
That structure would, yeah, you'd have to go back to the widgets and forms and all the structures of like, the Web 1 or even the early Web 2 stuff. I think thinking back, so I've always learned a lot, when we get acquired, right? And we've been acquired a couple of times. And I'm curious, like from you, sort of post acquisition when you're kind of going on this, hey, the mergers happened or the acquisitions happened, deals signed, check clears. What lessons have you learned from that point or in those first few months where it's like, wow, that was really, something that was really painful, or also something that, you were a smooth hack where you're like, man, that was just the best way to handle that sort of now that, I've sort of, moved on to the next thing or started the process?
We've been very fortunate. Good karma, nice people, or just English being my second language. So they've given up negotiating with me. So any of our deals had everything pretty much upfront with no lockup. So we never had in any of our prior exits any lockup or any earnout. What we did do, though, because you can only really shit on that deal once, because then you'll forever be locked in to something for years on end. So we did agree very clearly, which I think is of value, really, even with a lockup. What is it that you want from me? So you gave me $10. I get it. You don't really want me to have a career because if anything, I want your job. You're not surrendering your job. So, well, I guess I can have no career here. So with that in mind, how do I make this feel like $12 when I leave? Because you'll have some meeting with some board at some point trying to justify why we gave Dennis that $10. So tell me what that is. I'll make it as solid as possible, as quickly as possible, so that you can be in that board meeting and you can look awesome. But once I've done that, party is over. But you should be happy. But I don't want to make sure it's kind of too small. But don't give me something where, yeah, we need to kind of conquer Asia. That's not why you acquired me. So tell me what you want. So that we've been kind of, if not writing up, agreed on and said, Dennis, if you do these 7 things for me, I'm happy. Great. I'm on it. And that means I could continue to kind of lean in with that kind of startup stamina.
Yeah, I love that. Just reverse engineering that sort of ROI and how are they signing up or how are they underwriting this deal? And let me just go make that true as quick as possible.
And sometimes, if you're lucky, there's a set of metrics kind of attached to it. Not always. There might be some sort of political reasoning attached to it as well. But you can kind of try to materialize that as well, for where these are the people I was trying to impress. Now we need to figure out how you are trying to kind of impress them. And I'll help you kind of do that.
You've had many successful exits, Dennis. What compelled you to start fresh again with LaunchBrightly rather than just, sitting back, advising, investing, doing the multi-exit, founder thing?
I always felt a little kind of inauthentic to me when other entrepreneurs who I respected on my side of the table, which I see not as a kind of fluke or one-time thing where you kind of got lucky and made a kind of few monies and good on you and you certainly applied effort, but for me it's kind of a way of life. And then you kind of take your money, go to the other side of the table. I thought we were on the same team. Like, it looks like it's the same sport. It's not. It's like, from the outside, yes, these are all kind of VCs and founders and all kind of in the same bucket. Nah, you're not in
No.
my fucking bucket. You're don't
Yeah.
pretend to be here. It's kind of like all those little things when I kind of hear kind of angels or VCs. Yeah, we did it, or we got this to an exit. You didn't do shit. Like, let's just be honest. Hey, you're gonna get your check, but you did exactly nothing. Like, you were at the meeting, or if you did something, it doesn't even register. Like, you don't need to have a kind of PhD in statistics to figure out that whatever your input was is zero.
You weren't holding the shovel.
Yeah, you came to the right place.
Back.
Kevin's still grinding too, Dennis. Don't worry, he is not. He has not taken a back seat. He's still building. So you're in the right spot to talk about the
Very good.
real founder entrepreneur mindset.
I love it.
All of a sudden, we go from 3 screens to 2 screens.
No. We're good. We're good. All right, switching gears. I know you're a parent, and so parenting's really kind of rewired or switched your parenting game up. Like, what inspired you, or what kid-inspired sales hack has sort of helped you close deals?
What I certainly found is that people who have kids do selling, not very young ones, but once they kind of get to you can start to kind of negotiate with them, then you're selling every single day. Like, you're selling everything. Like, get up, eat your food. Like, so everything is a kind of is a pitch. But it can't even just be. You need to kind of, and some things you have to not even just sell, but kind of you need to kind of plant seeds of good ideas. So a little later you're going to take that decision. Like, oh, it takes real skill. And I think of all the sales training that I've looked at myself, that is some of the best of it. if you can somehow get 2 teenage girls to take some action tomorrow that you think is a good action, you got skill, man. Like,
Crushing it.
hats
I
off.
think we're all girl dads here. Like
Yeah.
you got 2 girls, I got 2 girls, Kevin's got a
Yep.
daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can convince them to do something, you are an excellent salesman. And that makes you good at founder-led sales. So you build this thing. It's called LaunchBrightly. It is this kind of screenshot automation platform. It's a pretty sharp and significant pivot from something like x.ai. What is the SaaS annoyance that hit you so hard that you're like, I got to fix this right now?
So my pool of inspiration comes from a list I run on my phone that I call my list of hate. Meaning that whenever I do a venture, I don't do anything else. So I don't angel invest. I don't sit on boards. I don't do advisory. I don't do all sorts of other kind of flim flam. I just do my venture so that when we win, I can take a little bit of credit. If we lose, I can just like accept it like a man that I wasn't good enough. And there was no distractions I can kind of blame for it. So in that, whenever I have an idea, and I don't know about you guys, I feel a little unfaithful if I have a new idea when I work on some other thing. Like, hey, that's this.
You're cheating on your current idea.
Yeah, it's like, what's going on, Dennis? So what I immediately do is I pull it out of my head, and my ideas are never things I think are cool. It's always moments where I thought being in line at JP Morgan, given our relationship, would be a nicer experience setting up this bloody CD, which I should have been able to do online. But hey, I guess that you write on your little list, I should start a retail bank. And all of those little things, I just add to that list of hate for where this shouldn't be like that. This was one of those items for where I always hated the fact that we had the product, then we had Dennis's version of what this would look like in the next 3 or 4 months. So I had a picture of what the future might look like, which I would sell to our customers because, hey, it's going to take 4 months to close anyway. So I might as well sell you what this will look like once you sign that contract. I'm always in the future, as we're supposed to be. Then I looked at our documentation, our marketing material, our case studies, all that kind of collateral, which is really just a bucket of screenshots of the tool, which is 3 or 4 months in the past. That means there's some sort of year-long delta between the future I live in, the collateral which I bring along with me. That hurt. And I think it hurts even more as a founder because the app and the tool is kind of like your little baby, and you're seeing it being mishandled in lousy, rotten screenshots. So that ended up on my list multiple times, and I thought, now is the time for somebody to come along, turn that into not a manual chore for somebody in the support department, but something for you set up some automation recipes, you run it like some sort of CI/CD process, like engineers on every new make. I'll just reprocess all your screenshots, run through all your articles and Zendesk, do a diff, update all of them. So come Sunday night, at least all your collateral lives with what we have today. Sure, Dennis can then kind of do his whole kind of future thing, but at least the product and the collateral have now aligned.
So good. Dennis, this has been incredibly insightful. Where can listeners find you online and then and more about your work with LaunchBrightly? And I think you have an offer, I think, for some of the listeners.
So first, they can find me personally everywhere on the internet at Dennis Mortensen. That'll be the handle. And if they want to talk automation of screenshots, we're on LaunchBrightly.com. If you happen to listen to this particular podcast with these 3 handsome fellows, you can ping me, Dennis at LaunchBrightly.com. We will take on the cost of creating that initial batch of, say, 1,000 automation recipes to bring all of your existing kind of collateral in your existing health center up to date. If you like that, then you can figure out whether you want to kind of contract with us. But that's certainly what you can get from have listened to us so far.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. And folks can mention founder mode, right, to get that offer. And thanks for giving your email. We'll include all of that Dennis just said in the show notes. So you can find him online. You can claim that offer if you need that kind of help. Just really grateful for you coming on and sharing your journey and insights with us today. We really appreciate your time, Dennis. Thanks so much.
Time well spent. Cheers, guys.
That was such an insightful conversation with Dennis.
Yeah, absolutely. His perspective on building AI companies in different eras, and also like, what is AI really and how important is that versus the painful problem you're trying to solve, was super refreshing to hear. Kevin, what were your key takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, it was a total blast from the past. I think, Dennis and I both building email and calendaring related
Yeah.
apps, back in the same time. So it was pretty cool to sort of walk through down memory lane some of those. But I think the 5 things that really hit me was one, this like eBay marketplace example of like, look, you can follow the money, but that doesn't always necessarily lead you to where the love. Like, where should you be applying the love? And it was really attracting customers. And then I think this number one task as a founder is really to try to pressure test and kill your idea before you even start. Like, get your friends, get your venture partners, get your, adversaries and friends and foes to sort of shoot at your idea and really find all the holes in it before you sort of get off and invest a lot into it. And then this notion of like, when you do get acquired and sort of post-acquisition, really defining upfront what those goals are. It's not the money, but it's a set of things that that company wants and really reverse engineering their sort of underwriting of the deal so that you know what to go do and have a very explicit goal to sort of check those items off of their list as soon as possible. Again, Dennis worked on AI for a long time before it was, really popular in our namesake. And so seeing AI solve a real pain today, and not just really to showcase this new tech, but actually solve a problem that somebody's seeing. This final thing about, kind of selling your roadmap and your product, it's like, you do what you have to do to sell, but remember that like you're typically ahead of what your product is today. And then again, bonus points if you're, great at convincing your kids to do things. I think that just becomes the sort of ultimate sort of hack for sales pros.
If you found value in this episode, please subscribe to Founder Mode wherever you get your podcasts, and share it with other founders who might benefit from Dennis's insights on AI, entrepreneurship, and building multiple successful companies.
And remember, in the world of AI, being early doesn't mean being wrong. It just means being patient. Thanks for listening to Founder Mode.